Hi guys, well, Shkonda here, and you're listening to Honey and Home podcast. Well, I just returned from Athens, and here's my story. So first of all, why you guys should actually go to Greece and to Athens, and I guess you all kind of know the story behind that. Like, personally, I am a huge fan of ancient Greece and its culture, and I hoped sometime that I finally get to Greece to see all this beautiful, gorgeous building that they made, like all these temples, agoras, which were for markets, and libraries, whatever. And unfortunately, Greece is not something that I expected to see, because during the time, obviously, people moved from the classical architecture that they used to build to something more eclectic, if I put it this way, something more modern and in some way less beautiful, not gorgeous at all, and just I wouldn't say that the Athens as overall is a beautiful city, besides the fact that all the buildings there has this white beige color, and this is what makes it a bit more impressive. And basically Athens and islands are two main destinations for tourists who actually go to visit Greece. And I managed to visit both. And let me tell you my story of where you should go. So first of all, for me as a person who is now living in the Netherlands, I was so much fascinated by how hilly it is. There are so many hills, and the landscape is just great. It's not this boring flat streets as we have here. And I was surprisingly satisfied by going up and down the hill for the first few days. Obviously, at some point in time, it also gets a bit tiring, and I understand the people who were like looking at me crazy when I proposed to go back home walking, and not everybody was so excited as I was. But anyway, at some point in time, I also got into this vibe of not really liking to walk. So as I mentioned, like, it's quite a hilly landscape, and there are a few main hills of Athens. And the first one is Lycabettus, is the highest hill in the whole Athens, and there is a small church on top of it with a restaurant and a great terrace. And I would definitely recommend you to go on your very first day to visit Lycabettus hill, because you'll have such a nice view on all Athens, because, well, it's the top of the city, so you definitely can see everything that's surrounding you. And it also was the first time when I actually saw Acropolis, which is probably the most famous hill in Athens, and probably in the whole world. I don't know any other hill to be as famous as Acropolis. Acropolis is mainly famous for Parthenon, which is staying on top of it, which was the temple of Athens and of Athena. And Athena is a goddess of wisdom and war, and basically the city Athens mainly means the city, like Athena city. As I mentioned, Acropolis is probably the main and most important hill, and if you guys go into Athens, it's probably the first destination you consider about when you think about all the sites that are in Athens. And obviously Parthenon is a must-see. Like, what are you even doing in Greece and in Athens if you don't want to go to Parthenon? So the building itself is quite gorgeous. It looks barely untouched in comparison to all the other ruins that you can see surrounding Acropolis. So like on the Plaka district, or I think it's called Plaka. So you'll see the ruins of Roman Agora, or library or Greek agora, and all you can see is just a few stones and maybe a bunch of pillars, which doesn't look as exciting as it could be, you know. That's why ascent to Acropolis is definitely something that you guys should do. And don't be greedy and just spend this 20 euros to visit one of the oldest temples in the whole world. Besides Acropolis, there is another hill right next to it called Philopappou. And you know, what's funny about Philopappou is not only the name, because Philopappou is basically made of two roots. Phila, which stands for feelings or loving something, being a friend with something, and Pappou, which in Greek means grandpa. So Grandpa Lover's Hill is right next to Acropolis, and from there you'll see one of the greatest view on the Parthenon if you a broke student. By the way, students get the access for free. And don't want to spend your money on, or you just don't want to spend your money on getting to there. So this is probably the greatest view you can get on the Parthenon, and probably the closest to grasp it all in one picture. And once you witness the greatness of Acropolis and the Parthenon, you'll probably think like, hey, you mentioned there are a bunch of hills and these are free, is it all? I would say no. There are way more of them, and I've been to two more. One of them is real weird hill. So most of those hills, there are like churches, and just a small historical fact that, well, I guess you probably knew that back in the days when the Christianity started to become a thing, Christians started to ruin all the Greek temples, so that's why only a few of them survived, and only a few of them, at least pillars left, you know. So that's why usually on all those hills you'll see Orthodox churches, and you know, Greeks have this specific type of Orthodox churches, which at first I found quite exciting, but in comparison to what we have in Ukraine, let's say. But then I started to spot them every now and then, and me and my friend Niarchos, we had kind of inside joke about that. Like, he was always telling me, hey, look, here is another church. And I don't know, maybe we encountered about 20-30 churches surrounding Athens, and this is insane amount of it. You know, honestly, people, why do you need so many churches? Anyhow, so there was another hill with some kind of amphitheater, which was empty at that point of time, but it looked cool because, you know, there was such a great surrounding, and I bet the acoustics also quite good because it's like in a valley, and it's all surrounded by big hills and big rocks, and the amphitheater itself is not quite big, but I bet that in the evenings you can have a great show there, or yeah, I don't know. It felt quite good to be in that place. I don't remember the exact name. I'll probably put it somewhere here, because when I tried to read it myself to the friends of mine, they never heard of that hill. And it was somewhere in the middle to the hill where we actually went on the last day, which is Philatei Hill, which is also one of the highest. I think it's the second highest after Lycabettus Hill, and we actually didn't manage to go to the very top of it. But yeah, this one is actually in the northern part of the city, and the slope that we were ascending, we actually were able to see only the northern part from it, which was great because before that part was hidden by this hill, but we managed to see like the Olympic Stadium and all this new Philatei district, which is also considered to be quite a posh one. So these are the hills. But obviously hills are not always in the center, except for Acropolis and Philopappou. And basically, when you guys go in from the airport to the city center, probably the first thing you'll go to Syntagma Square. And Syntagma Square is main square where the parliament is situated, all these posh hotels as well. And dude, I swear, when I stepped out of the metro on the Syntagma Square, I felt like being back at home. People trying to sell the subscriptions for the Vodafone phone operator, or people trying to sell you some other bullshit stuff like nuts or sunflower seeds, you know. There were like bunch of eclectic fountains, there were a bunch of trees. People are actually wearing kind of the same clothes as we would wear in this part of the year. And the terrible parliament building. Honestly, I think Greece has a worse one than we have, let's say, in Kiev or something, but it just looks like a big barn. It's totally untasteful, you know. It's definitely, I don't know who came up with the idea of building such an ugly building, but from what Niarchos, my friend, told me that, oh, you probably have this kind of weird opinion about that building only because you haven't been inside, but inside it's pure luxury, almost everything in gold and blah blah blah. But honestly, for the person who is a tourist and probably wouldn't get into parliament ever unless I'm buying like a tour, but why do I need a tour to parliament, honestly? Yeah, I would judge by the looks, how this looks on the street, and it looks terrible in my view. But what kind of can entertain you in front of the parliament are these funny guards. I would call them funny only because of their outfit, because guys, we live in the 21st century, and I found the funniest guards outfit ever. Like, they have this weird red hat with the thing here, like we usually are on the capes, you know, which is fine, I guess. Like, different hats, whatever. Like, look at the one they have in Britain, which is also hilarious. They basically put a raccoon on their hat. But the whole outfit is also, it's kind of goofy, you know. Like, they have this kind of a sandals or wherever with big pom-poms on top of the toes, and it also looks like they are in tights and not like proper pants, and it looks a bit like a skirt because they have this kind of long shirt, and they also have this vest, and I don't know, I mean, it looked a bit hilarious. If you're gonna move around the center, of course, you'll visit Plaka, you'll visit the shopping street, which looks kind of okay, and I guess, like, if you go down the shopping street, you'll go to Monastiraki, which is a square of the old monastery, and also one of the biggest metro stations. So if you guys moving around the city, you'll definitely need to use metro, because the city in itself is quite huge, and you couldn't really admit using the public transport, and don't even consider using bikes, because it's insane, unless these are electric bikes, because of all the hills, downhills, uphills. It's really terrible to get a rental. That's why you barely see any bikes in there. So in Monastiraki, this is basically another way to get into Acropolis part, where all the ruins are. But if you go also a bit further to the, I think it's northwest from the center, you'll visit the Omonia, which is quite an obscure neighborhood, and you'll visit even better neighborhood called Exarchia. And Exarchia is something that was in Copenhagen, like this unofficial republic, Christiania, the city of Christiania. I think this is how it was called. Yeah, people selling drugs, people doing drugs, police doesn't go there, and if Christiania fought for their right to be there, I guess Exarchia has more, I don't know, like it just has an agreement between them and government, and like they don't really care about their rights to be independent from anything. But yeah, police just doesn't go there, you know. Everybody knows what's happening. No one wants to stop it. Maybe no one needs to stop it, but I was quite surprised to see there is like the whole dedicated district for such thing also in Athens. Yeah, just a fun fact, you know. And obviously If you also speak about some other neighborhoods, maybe one of those which I would like to point out is Glyfada, which is another posh neighborhood like a Philatei, but if Philatei was more in the north or no access to the sea, Glyfada is actually at the sea and it's quite far from the city center. I think it's about 12 kilometers, 10, 12. So it will take you some time to get in there, but this is the best beach you can reach within the city limits. And of course, all these neighborhoods are considered to be a part of Greater Athens. Obviously, Athens, as all the big cities, the urbanization processes keep on going. That's why they add in more and more suburbs to their limits to the municipality. And so Glyfada is one of those good neighborhoods where you can actually go look at the marine, look at the sea. It's probably not the cleanest sea you can get, and usually people will go to islands for that. But yeah, if you're in Athens and if you don't really feel like going anywhere on the ferry, feel free to crash at Glyfada's beaches, and they look quite nice. Not so many people were during the work days, because when I came there was Wednesday, I think, so it wasn't busy at all. And the neighborhood itself is just cleaner, less people put in their shitty graffiti tags, everywhere, and it just in itself has like this, not the posh vibe, but like the vibe of more cleaner neighborhood. I don't know, like if we would call everything posh that's already clean, then we can call it posh. Yeah. Unfortunately, if this is already distinctive enough to call something posh, I have bad news for you, Greece. Anyhow, another part of the city where you should definitely go, of course, if you also consider going to islands, you will inevitably go there, which is Piraeus. And Piraeus is basically the port. I guess it used to be also a town, now it became a part of Athens as well. And quite a big port, has quite a chill marine, so if you guys are interested looking at luxurious boats, you can get there as well. The neighborhood itself is okay. Like, I wouldn't say there is anything that cool or not, but like there's no distinct difference between what you can see in the city center as well. But in a nutshell, Piraeus is definitely something that you also should visit, because it's another big greater district. And also, of course, if you're a sports fan, there is a Olympiacos stadium for football team, and the stadium of love and of peace and friendship, I think, which is the basketball court for their basketball team, basically. Yes. And now, guys, we go into the island finally, and I actually managed to visit one of them, one of the closest ones, which was Aegina. It took me about 1 hour 10 minutes to get there on ferry, and my biggest memory from there was that I got sunburned. Honestly, the vibe I get from there is literally like is a bit of a combination of more European way of doing business out on the streets and more of our way to do business in the small resorts, Aegina town is it's quite okay. I mean, I wouldn't say there's something that exciting that you definitely need to visit. There are a few interesting buildings. The town structure is any of small towns, European small towns, so like quite narrow streets. It also has quite a hilly landscape, so it's also more interesting to walk around, not just on the flat surface. And the beaches there are better than in Athens. I wouldn't say that they're the best, but I managed to go to one which was quite a good one. Not so many people. Clean sea. Well, I really like the Greek sea. Like it's really clean and transparent. It's maybe a bit too salty to my taste, but who cares, right? Like you didn't come there to drink the water. So you just swimming in the sea, taking some sun baths, and trying to survive around the town. around the island, because if you guys decide to go somewhere outside of town, you're most likely going to be screwed. Like, I managed to get to the shop by using a lot of Google Maps, but usually this is really like rural area and like people just living in their cottages, and it's not like a town. You'll still be able to get to some of the inhabitants of the island. They made their own shops, kinda, where they sell some drinks and water and stuff. So you wouldn't die, definitely, but I wouldn't recommend to go there. And I think so I wanted to actually go to another side of the island, because there were a beautiful complex of ruins on the other side. But if there is no public transportation, the only way to get somewhere is on scooter or on car. You probably can also get taxi. I haven't thought about that. I thought about like, okay, so if I just need to walk around, I'll just take a look whether I can get to another side of the island. And honestly, it would have taken me 3 hours, 2.5 hours to get to another side where all the ruins were. So I thought it wasn't worth it. I already got sunburned and a bit stunned because of that. So I just chilled in the shade. But I guess if you're on the car, and a lot of people went there on the cars as well, and maybe you have a bike, it's not as hilly as Athens, so it would worse go in there and maybe visit those temples, which are quite fine. But like, remember, ruins are always ruins, and I think only Parthenon is the only ruin worth visiting. Yeah, let's now talk about the places. So, as I mentioned, Parthenon is a must-visit place in Athens. Dude, if you're in Athens and you haven't visited Parthenon, what were you doing? Unless it's your like third, fourth time. Like, if it's your first time, you definitely need to go to Parthenon. Like, it's a must-see. It's incredible. It looks still quite good, even though they put like the constructions to keep it stable, but construction support, I mean. But you know, this is where you feel the power of the history. And like, you get top of the hill, you walk around, you see the Parthenon, you walk through these old gates, you see the Caryatides temple, you see some other stuff happening out there. And probably, as you may know, there was a story about the Acropolis, so it also used to be kind of a fortress. And when Nazi Germany took over the Greece, they obviously put their flag on top of the hill, because yeah, like Acropolis was the city center, so they will see the Nazi flag from every part of the city. So basically, there were two guys during the wartime who took down the Nazi flag and put up the Greece flag, and while there was still Nazi regime, and yeah, so now you will see the sign explaining you the situation that happened. So that's how the guys became heroes. And you'll still see the flag up in there, the Greek flag up in there, saluting to those guys who did it back in the Second World War. So after you went to Acropolis, you also will think like, okay, so what now? And besides just going sightseeing, definitely can visit a bunch of museums. And I guess if you archaeological geek, and or maybe if you haven't really visited any archaeological museums before, Athens is probably a great place to start. And I guess if you'll get to archaeological part there, you'll see all the other archaeological parts in the whole world, because you'll see all the pots, statues, everything. So me and the guys went to Acropolis Museum, which was quite chill. Like, it was quite interesting. I would say the biggest, the most interesting exhibition they had was about the Parthenon, and like they put all the glyphs, I think this is how it's called. So on the top of the Parthenon, on the roof, on the sides, it were like, not like fresks, but more like bas-reliefs, something like this. So some of them are still left on the Parthenon, but because it's too old and was bombed, it was, like a lot of stuff happened with that. So they basically took those parts which full of, and they put it in one big exhibition. So basically, if you walk around it, you'll see how those things were composed on the top of the Parthenon, and it was quite a thing to see. But honestly, beside that, you'll see the same good old stuff that you'll see in any archaeological museum. Also, I personally went to Benaki Museum, which is a contemporary art. It was situated in like one of those club areas close to Technopolis. And Technopolis is like the, parts of those old factories restructured now to be a event space, So I went to Benaki Museum, and the exhibition was quite good. And like I watched this fun film about Greek scrap metal collectors who were wanted to reclaim their wells back because the government took their few millions euros from them because of some crisis or whatever. They were a bit delusional about their wells, I guess, but it was fun to watch a bit. But besides that, there were some crazy other exhibitions. Some of them were quite cool and interesting. Like there was this pyramid of the famous scientists and philosophers. You'll basically see, and if you take a look on top, there is a Diogenes. So, to my shame, guys didn't know the facts about him, that he was going with a lantern and living in a barrel. So I hope I didn't mix him up with anyone else. Anyhow, so Benaki Museum, if you're into contemporary art, definitely worth visiting. If you're into something more classical, I have no idea, but I bet there should be museums where you can watch some more classical stuff. More classic stuff, I mean. Also, besides that, you can always visit all the ruins, but as I mentioned, if you visit one ruin, you'll see all the ruins. And like, again, I would stress on it even more. Go to Acropolis, buy your ticket, you'll see the gorgeous amphitheater, which is still being used for theatrical purposes. And when we were there, we saw the play, and I think it was the rehearsals. Was quite curious to see, and the acoustics were perfect. And there is another amphitheater on the same hill on the other side, which is not in use anymore, but also quite cool to see. And like, come on, Acropolis and Parthenon must visit places. I cannot stress it even more. So yes, if you're there, go there. And another cool thing to see is the center of the foundation, built by one of these Greek billionaires. Actually, I don't remember the name. I'll probably put it somewhere here. It's a great territory, the great space. They built the gorgeous park. It's not in the greatest part of the Athens, I would say, as far as I understood. It's quite close to the sea. The building itself is tall. They actually called the top part the lighthouse. So you can actually go on top, and you can see the Athens from the side of the sea to another side, and you can obviously take a look at the sea, the marine. But I think the more interesting viewers on that side. And right next to it, there is a huge library, so you can find the books in any languages. And the friends of mine told me that I could have found like books in Russian and Ukrainian, but I actually didn't really dare to check out the library. I saw it from the outside, and from the outside it looks insane. And yeah, like there was a huge space for some events, so like there were all these chairs standing outside, and also there is like a big canal or pond, whatever you call it, where people even going sailing on kayaks. And yeah, like it's a great territory to visit, and just go on that side, this will be cool. And last but not the least, of course, I'm probably not as excited about going to Aegina. Not necessarily, I would not recommend you going there. It's just like this new experience, I guess. But my friends were telling me that if you ever in Greece again, you need to go to the proper islands. And what by proper island they mean something like Mykonos or Santorini, which are quite touristy, but like there should be other islands with the same type of the architecture, and basically you see this kind of a small white buildings and narrow streets and everything, and it's quite cool. I wouldn't say that it necessarily gives you completely different vibe from what you can get in Athens, but I guess it's still worth visiting. And especially if you want to get a proper chill holiday, you definitely need to go to islands. Like you probably wouldn't get this in Athens. Athens is not that chill of a city. It's quite chaotic. And, you know, on one of the days we even got the earthquake. And I don't think this is something that wouldn't happen on the island or something. But just beware and be ready that earthquakes happening every now and then in Athens. And I actually missed the strongest one, but I felt the one that was like after it. It went after it, and yeah, gave me some chills because of that. And the last but not the least, food. Guys, like if you ever would like to plan a gastronomic tour to some European country, Greece is the place where you should definitely go. Like, this is such a great cuisine. Like, there is a nice variety and combination of tastes of different spices and everything, and it's this kind of weird mixture of what you can also see, what also felt to me a bit like my native cuisine a bit, like in terms of the tastes. But yeah, the food is just great. Like, I really enjoyed fava, which is basically peas puree, but come on, this is so good and it tastes so nicely, and it actually gave me some flashbacks and nostalgic feel about my childhood. The meat is usually great, like the souvlaki, and when you order the pita gyros, which is kind of analog of shawarma or kebab or something, you know, so they put in a huge pita, a lot of meat inside, veggies, sauces, and also they put rice inside, which is probably such an interesting invention they made. It makes you fill up so much that, you know, you don't even need to eat anything more. Just get one pita gyros. Honestly, wouldn't recommend you because it's not too healthy, but get one pita gyros with a bit of a chiporo or ouzo or rakia, and you know you get there. And yeah, so chiporo, ouzo, rakia are their liquors. I wouldn't say this is the most tasty things I ever tried, but like if you're there, yeah, just give it a try. Maybe you'll like it. I know some people prefer ouzo, but I'm not a big fan. So that was it, guys. Let me know what do you think of the Greece, so the Athens. Basically, if you've ever been to Greece before, maybe to islands, you can share your experience down in the comments and leave your thoughts as well. I'm always curious to read them. And yeah, thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.